What are two examples of German resistance to the Nazis in the Second World War? Professor Poutine here, time for Mysteries Histories. In 1943, the Gestapo began to finally round up all of the Jews in Germany that were married to non-Jews. And in a thing called the Fabrikaktion in February 1943, several thousand Jews were rounded up and moved to a place called Rosenstrasse in Berlin, awaiting deportation to Auschwitz or Treblinka. Now, when their wives, who were not Jewish, realized their husbands hadn't come home, they showed up at Rosenstrasse and began demanding that their husbands be released. The SS guards pushed them and shoved them and told them to go home, but they didn't. And as days stretched into weeks, the protest grew from hundreds to thousands of women demanding that the Jews be released. And sometimes they stood there and yelled and screamed, and sometimes they simply stood silently, staring at the SS. And finally, after weeks, in early March 1943, virtually all of the Jews that were being held by the Gestapo were released back to their wives, and virtually all of them survived the Second World War. It's a remarkable example of courage in the face of real potential violence. As one of the surviving protesters told Professor Nathan Stoltzfus, if we had calculated, we wouldn't have gone to the street to protest. We acted from the heart, and it's surprising what you can do when facing crisis, how much strength you might be able to gain if you take that first step. We did not begin by thinking whether the protest would matter, but as the police repeatedly threatened to shoot us down in the streets, and as they didn't do it, we began to get hope that maybe we will prevail. That was the largest public protest in Nazi Germany against the deportation of the Jews. Another really significant protest, although one that ended not quite so well, was that of the White Rose campaign, led by 21-year-old Sophie Scholl, her brother Hans, and a group of University of Munich professors. They began handing out pamphlets at the University of Munich, which spread to other universities, highlighting the fact that Jews were being deported to their death and clamoring to get their fellow students and citizens to stand up and do something about this tragedy. In their very last pamphlet they handed out before they were arrested by the Gestapo and executed, the White Rose wrote this. There, underlined at the bottom, they wrote, "If you know what's going on, why don't you act? Why do you tolerate the rulers robbing you in public and in private of one right after another, until one day nothing, absolutely nothing remains except for the state under the command of criminals and drunkards?" Though in the moment the White Rose campaign failed, that's not how history judges Hans and Sophie Scholl. And their last warning should ring like a clarion call in the ears of anybody in 2026 in the United States or anywhere else watching rights being ripped away. And if we can all have a fraction of the courage that the Rosenstrasse protest or the White Rose had, what a world we could build. Consider yourself updated.